Daniel Pearl, Kidnapping and Murder. 2002, Karachi, the vanished journalist. Fading. A grainy newsroom photo. A ticking clock. A passport placed gently on a table. And then, silence. January 2002, Karachi, Pakistan. American journalist Daniel Pearl, a man known for his fearless investigative reporting, vanished while pursuing a story about terrorist networks and identity fraud. What was supposed to be a routine interview spiraled into one of the most shocking abductions of the post-9/11 world. For days, authorities scrambled. For weeks, intelligence agencies clashed. And in the shadows, a group of kidnappers carefully constructed a maze of false names, fake organizations, and conflicting demands, ensuring that truth stayed buried under a mountain of confusion. But who were these men, really? Why was Daniel targeted? And how did a journalist's final investigation become a political firestorm, involving militants, double agents, informants, and international pressure? Tonight, we follow the path Daniel walked, from his last confirmed movements to the intricate network of kidnappers who lured him into a deadly trap. We unravel the real timeline, expose the hidden players, and reveal the shocking failures that could have changed everything. Before we begin, if you're someone who believes the world deserves clearer answers, please like this documentary, drop a comment about your thoughts as you watch, share this video with others who follow true crime stories. And most importantly, subscribe to Dark Truth 25 so you never miss our next deep investigation. Your support helps keep stories like this alive and ensures victims are never forgotten. This is the Daniel Pearl case, a story of truth, danger, betrayal, and a disappearance that changed global journalism forever. The vanished journalist, Daniel Pearl's final assignment. The story begins in January 2002 in the bustling, unpredictable streets of Karachi, Pakistan, a city where information travels faster than truth and danger hides in plain sight. Daniel Pearl, a highly respected Wall Street Journal reporter, had arrived to investigate the murky world of extremist networks, forged identities, and the rapidly shifting alliances shaping post-9/11 South Asia. But within days, Daniel's movements would become difficult to trace. His messages became shorter, more cautious. His tone shifted, and then he vanished. In this chapter, we retrace Daniel Pearl's final known steps, focusing on the sequence of events that led from a routine investigative interview request to one of the most shocking kidnappings in modern journalism. Daniel had been pursuing a lead tied to Richard Reed, the infamous shoe bomber, hoping to uncover deeper connections inside Pakistan's militant landscape. Through contacts, intermediaries, and informants, he was introduced to individuals claiming they could set up a meeting with a key figure, a supposed religious leader with access to underground networks. But what Daniel didn't know was that this web of contacts was laced with deception. Many of the individuals he trusted were operating under false names, shifting alliances, and multiple identities. Some were militants, some were criminals, some were pretending to be journalists themselves. As Daniel set out for what he believed was a legitimate interview, eyewitness accounts describe him riding in a silver car, calm, confident, and carrying his notebook, the same notebook he had used to cross dozens of conflict zones. Unbeknownst to him, messages were already being exchanged between kidnappers, handlers, and shadowy figures in Karachi's underbelly. The trap was tightening. We examine the timeline in detail. 10:45 a.m., Daniel leaves his hotel, exchanging brief words with colleagues afternoon. He arrives near the set meeting point, still unaware of the danger later. Contact is lost. Calls go unanswered. Hours turn into panic. By nightfall, it becomes clear Daniel Pearl has not returned. A journalist known for navigating some of the world's most dangerous regions had disappeared inside a city he thought he understood. But this is not just a kidnapping. It is a case built on layers of lies, false identities, competing militant groups, and a kidnapping network more complex than investigators first believed. In this chapter, we set the stage for the investigation ahead, one where nothing is what it seems, and truth becomes harder to find than the man who sought it. The abduction setup, emails, lures, and the deadly trap. The second chapter of this investigation takes us deeper into the dangerous network of deception that ultimately led to journalist Daniel Pearl's disappearance. If Chapter 1 established the world he stepped into, Chapter 2 reveals the trap that was quietly waiting. Section 1. The assignment Daniel was following. Daniel Pearl wasn't wandering blindly into danger. He was chasing a lead that seemed credible, promising, and potentially groundbreaking. He was investigating possible links between Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, and militant networks in Pakistan, rising extremist activity in Karachi, alleged connections between religious seminaries and radical groups. His work was high-pressure journalism, not sensational but meticulously sourced. And to get answers, he needed interviews with the people who operated in the shadows. That's when the messages began. Section 2. The email chain that started it all. While researching, Daniel received emails from someone claiming to connect him to Sheikh Jelani, a religious leader. The tone of the messages suggested cooperation. The sender appeared well-informed, polite, and eager to clarify misunderstandings. But behind that friendly digital facade was a carefully crafted trap. The emails claimed Jelani was willing to speak. A safe meeting could be arranged. Local guides would escort Daniel. Everything was approved and standard procedure. Daniel's colleagues would later say the emails didn't raise immediate red flags. They looked like hundreds of legitimate interview arrangements journalists handle every day. The deception was professional, polished, practiced. This wasn't amateur manipulation. It was a system. Section 3. The meeting arrangements. Subtle red flags. As the messages continued, small inconsistencies began to appear. The guide insisted Daniel come alone. The meeting location changed twice. Timings were shifted last minute. The identity of the interview contact kept evolving. These were not screaming warnings, but faint, subtle alerts. Daniel, determined to verify sensitive information, believed he was heading into a challenging but manageable interview. He didn't know he was walking directly into the center of a militant recruitment and kidnapping ecosystem operating quietly in Karachi. Section 4. The Fake Guide. The man who finally met Daniel introduced himself as a facilitator, someone familiar with media people, someone used to the press. But he was not a facilitator. He was a handler. Everything about him was designed to appear harmless. Neutral clothing, soft-spoken approach, slow, confident gestures, a rehearsed backstory. He walked Daniel through crowded areas to minimize suspicion. He maintained the illusion of a legitimate meeting. Journalists later called this the perfect camouflage, the kind that doesn't trigger fear but builds trust. Section 5. The final deception before the abduction. At one point, the guide gently redirected Daniel down a quiet street. A narrow, unlit lane, out of public view. Daniel reportedly made a brief call to inform someone that he had reached the location. That was the last moment of normalcy. Within minutes, the interview escort became the kidnapping operative. A car stopped abruptly. Strangers surrounded him. Daniel Pearl, respected journalist, father-to-be, was pushed inside. No negotiation, no explanation, no time to react. This was the moment when a high-stakes investigation turned into a global crisis. Section 6. Why Daniel Pearl was targeted. His captors would later claim they kidnapped him because he was an American, he was Jewish, he was a journalist, they wanted political leverage. But deeper motivations emerged. Faction rivalry among militant groups, internal power, struggles, attempts to gain publicity, a desire to send a message to the U.S. manipulation of the Kashmir conflict narrative. His kidnapping was not just revenge or ideology. It was a brutal performance staged for political gain. Section 7. The abduction becomes public. Hours later, emails were sent to major news agencies. Daniel Pearl had been taken. The kidnappers released disturbing statements demanding U.S. detainee releases, better treatment of Taliban prisoners, press attention. They attached photos meant to spread fear and power. A journalist who had come to investigate truth became the center of a global hostage crisis. Why so many entities claimed responsibility. The kidnapping operation. How Daniel Pearl was taken. The days leading up to Daniel Pearl's kidnapping were filled with subtle warnings. Warnings ignored not because of recklessness, but because Daniel believed in his work. He believed in meeting people face to face, even in one of the world's most unpredictable regions. Daniel had traveled to Karachi to investigate the links between Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, and a possible militant network operating in Pakistan. His reporting had already stirred interest, curiosity, and suspicion among extremist circles. But nothing suggested he was just days away from being trapped in a carefully engineered kidnapping. The setup begins. Daniel arranged a meeting with a man claiming to have access to militants, someone who supposedly had information no one else could offer. Emails were exchanged, numbers were shared, and Daniel believed he was closing in on a breakthrough. But what he didn't know was this. Multiple fake identities were being used to lure him in. The man he thought he was meeting never existed, and each message sent to him was part of a larger web designed to entangle him without alarm. The operation was already in motion. The day of the meeting, January 23, 2002, Daniel left his Karachi residence, telling his wife, Marion, that he'd be back soon. He climbed into a taxi, unaware that from the moment he sat down, he was being tracked. The route, the timing, the people waiting for him, it was all orchestrated perfectly. When Daniel arrived at the supposed meeting location, something fell off. The street was quieter than expected. The contact wasn't there. And before he could react, multiple men surrounded him. What happened next was swift, rehearsed, and precise. His phone was taken. His hands were restrained. He was forced into a vehicle. And within minutes, Daniel Pearl, a journalist seeking truth, vanished into the Karachi underworld. The first message. Hours later, the kidnappers sent emails declaring they had Daniel in their custody. Photographs were attached. Demands were issued. Accusations were made. It became instantly clear. This wasn't a random kidnapping. It was political, careful, and dangerous. This was the start of a global crisis, one that would expose how deeply extremist networks had infiltrated Karachi and how easily a foreign journalist could disappear in plain sight. And for investigators, the nightmare was only beginning. Inside the kidnappers' network, false identities and digital traps. As the investigation into Daniel Pearl's abduction unfolded, a terrifying picture emerged. The kidnappers weren't just a simple criminal cell. They were a sophisticated network operating with precision and secrecy. Profiles of key suspects revealed individuals who wore multiple masks. Each had a history of using false identities, some online, some offline, all designed to remain untraceable. From fake passports to aliases in multiple languages, these criminals were adept at disappearing in plain sight. The digital trail was equally misleading. Emails and phone numbers traced to one country were actually routed through several others. Every investigation led to another layer of deception. Law enforcement agencies found themselves navigating a dangerous digital labyrinth, often one step behind the perpetrators. And yet, even with these obstacles, pieces of the puzzle began to emerge. Connections between suspects, recurring locations, and patterns in communication hinted at a structured network, one far larger than anyone initially imagined. This chapter dives into the shadowy world of the kidnappers' network, revealing how false identities and calculated misdirection allowed them to operate, and why catching those responsible proved to be one of the most complex challenges in modern investigative history. The global hunt for Daniel Pearl, the world had now turned its attention to Karachi. Governments, intelligence agencies, and media organizations from multiple countries scrambled to understand what had happened and locate Daniel Pearl. 1. International alarm. Pearl's disappearance triggered an immediate response from the U.S. State Department, the FBI, and Pakistan's intelligence agencies. Coordination challenges arose. Multiple countries involved, overlapping jurisdictions, and slow information sharing. Global media attention amplified pressure, both helping and complicating the investigation. 2. Search operations. Local authorities and international operatives worked together, combing neighborhoods, safe houses, and known militant hideouts. Witnesses were interviewed, informants contacted, and tips followed, many of which led to dead ends. Security risks were high. The environment was volatile, and each lead carried potential dangers for investigators. 3. The role of militants. Investigators realized that Daniel's kidnapping was orchestrated by a network of militants with layered communication channels. False identities, forged documents, and shifting hideouts made tracking him extremely difficult. The complexity of the network highlighted how organized and elusive these groups were. 4. Media pressure and public interest. As Pearl's plight became front-page news, public awareness grew internationally. Appeals from the journalist community, politicians, and celebrities sought to maintain pressure on authorities. Yet, media exposure sometimes risked compromising sensitive operations, creating tension between publicity and security. 5. Unfolding clues. Several cryptic messages, videos, and ransom notes appeared, each adding layers of confusion. Some information suggested internal betrayals or leaks, raising questions about loyalty and trust among the networks involved. Analysts studied every detail from handwriting to accents, seeking patterns that could pinpoint Pearl's location. 6. Global reflection. Daniel Pearl's kidnapping became a case study in international law enforcement collaboration. Agencies analyzed communication failures, jurisdictional conflicts, and response protocols to improve future handling of high-profile abductions. His case underscored the dangers journalists face in conflict zones worldwide and sparked discussions on media safety, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic pressure. Tone: neutral, investigative, and comprehensive, suitable for both true crime and mystery channels, as it focuses on the facts, operations, and global consequences, without leaning heavily into speculative or sensationalist storytelling. Clues, leads, and the network behind the kidnapping. As the search for Daniel Pearl intensified, investigators began piecing together fragments of evidence that slowly painted a clearer picture of the network responsible for his kidnapping. 1. Tracing communications. The first breakthrough came from intercepted phone calls and email communications. Analysts work around the clock, decoding messages, tracking IP addresses, and identifying aliases. Each message revealed not only instructions for Daniel Pearl's captors, but also the internal hierarchy of the militant group. 2. Witness accounts. Local witnesses reported suspicious individuals near Pearl's last known location in Karachi. Street vendors, neighbors, and taxi drivers provided small details that became critical pieces of the puzzle. Investigators meticulously cross-referenced every account, eliminating false leads and confirming credible sightings. 3. Understanding the militant network. Investigators realized this was not a random abduction. It was highly organized. Multiple militants, each with distinct roles, were involved: planners, enforcers, and those tasked with hiding Pearl. Safe houses were rotated, false identities maintained, and surveillance on investigators detected, demonstrating the network's sophistication. 4. Forensic evidence and analytical techniques. Every recovered item, from clothing fibers to fingerprints, was examined. Analysts used behavioral profiling to predict captors' movements and potential drop-off locations. This scientific approach helped narrow search areas and focus intelligence efforts. 5. International collaboration. Agencies from the U.S., Pakistan, and other countries collaborated, sharing data, insights, and tactical plans. Despite political tensions, intelligence officers worked tirelessly to uncover the connections among different extremist groups. The complexity of the network highlighted the global reach of militant organizations and the challenges of cross-border investigations. 6. Emerging patterns. Certain operational patterns emerged. The group preferred isolated areas, rotated hideouts every few days, and used intermediaries to communicate. Investigators connected previous kidnappings in the region, revealing a disturbing pattern of targeting foreign journalists. Analysts mapped these patterns to anticipate future movements and prevent further abductions. 7. Public pressure intensifies. News of the investigation, combined with Pearl's high-profile status, put immense pressure on both local and international authorities. Public campaigns, appeals from global media, and diplomatic interventions created urgency, but also complicated operations by exposing investigative strategies. 8. The emotional toll. Families of kidnapped journalists, including Pearl's, faced extreme anxiety and uncertainty. The human aspect, fear, hope, and grief, became a constant backdrop to the meticulous work of investigators. Each lead brought a mix of hope and disappointment, as the reality of the danger Daniel faced weighed heavily on everyone involved. 9. The turning point approaches. By late 2002, the combination of intelligence breakthroughs, witness cooperation, and meticulous tracking brought investigators closer to locating Pearl. This chapter set the stage for the discovery of his tragic fate and the eventual exposure of the entire militant network. Inside the captor's hideout, life in confinement. As investigators pieced together the network behind Daniel Pearl's kidnapping, new information emerged about the conditions of his captivity. Understanding the environment and mindset of his captors became critical for both the investigation and future prosecutions. 1. The hidden location. Daniel was held in a nondescript urban area, chosen for its anonymity and the ease of controlling access. The hideout was modest but strictly guarded, with a few trusted operatives stationed to monitor any movement. Investigators later reconstructed the location using witness accounts, intercepted communications, and satellite imagery. 2. Daily life and psychological torture. Conditions were deliberately harsh to disorient and intimidate Daniel. Limited food, restricted movement, and controlled interactions created a constant sense of vulnerability. Psychological pressure, combined with the captor's unpredictable behavior, was a tactic to extract information or break his will. 3. Interactions with captors. Despite the violence surrounding him, Daniel reportedly tried to communicate calmly and humanely with his captors. Observers later noted his resilience, his attempts at reasoning, and his capacity to maintain composure under extreme stress. These small acts of defiance provided both hope and frustration for his captors, revealing the challenge of controlling a highly intelligent and resourceful hostage. 4. Tactical mistakes by the kidnappers. The captors occasionally underestimated the speed and scope of international intelligence coordination. Intercepted calls, unusual supply requests, and unguarded movements gave authorities fragments of crucial information. Each minor error accumulated, allowing investigators to narrow down potential locations and responsible operatives. 5. Global media and captor strategy. The kidnappers were aware of media attention and used it to amplify fear while attempting to manage public perception. They created videos and messages intended to demonstrate power, intimidate, and manipulate both local and international audiences. Investigators and analysts had to consider the authenticity and hidden meanings within these communications carefully. 6. Human element. Reports later revealed that some captors had personal conflicts, rivalries, and fears that influenced the unfolding events. Understanding the human element, the motivations, emotions, and pressures within the network, became key to anticipating their next moves. This knowledge informed both negotiation strategies and tactical operations to protect Daniel or gather evidence for prosecution. By dissecting the environment, behaviors, and internal dynamics of the captors, authorities gained invaluable insights that would later help them identify the operatives involved, understand the mechanisms of the network, and lay the groundwork for eventual justice. The investigation widens, uncovering a network of militants. After the initial shock of Daniel Pearl's kidnapping, intelligence agencies worldwide coordinated to trace his whereabouts. This chapter explores the meticulous, painstaking process of piecing together the web of militants responsible for his abduction. 1. Immediate response. Following the kidnapping, local authorities in Karachi launched urgent search operations. International bodies, including the FBI and Interpol, were immediately alerted. Teams had to act fast, but carefully to avoid endangering Daniel, navigating a city full of conflicting information and limited reliable leads. 2. Collecting evidence. Investigators gathered witness statements from locals who had seen suspicious activity near Pearl's last known locations. Phone records, intercepted communications, and bank transactions began to form a digital footprint of the kidnappers. The process highlighted the challenges of tracing operatives skilled in deception and movement across city networks. 3. Linking local operatives. Evidence pointed to several individuals acting as direct abductors. Analysts noted patterns. Certain operatives were repeat offenders, using similar tactics in prior crimes. Profiling these individuals helped map the structure of the kidnapping operation, from planners to ground-level actors. 4. International coordination. U.S., Pakistani, and other intelligence agencies had to synchronize efforts across time zones and bureaucracies. Shared intelligence included satellite imagery, intercepted calls, and undercover informants reporting from inside networks. This collaboration revealed the complexity of militant networks and the necessity of cross-border cooperation. 5. Challenges and misleads. The investigation faced false leads, double agents, and planted misinformation designed to misdirect authorities. Analysts had to separate deliberate deception from genuine clues, a task requiring both analytical skill and patience. These misleads extended the time Daniel was held captive, adding urgency to every verified lead. 6. The role of media. Press coverage played a dual role. It kept global attention on the case, but it also risked alerting captors to investigative moves. Careful management of information was essential to prevent the kidnappers from changing locations or altering behavior. Media became a tool for awareness, international pressure, and subtle negotiation leverage. 7. Tracing the network. The investigation uncovered connections to a broader group of militants operating within Karachi and across the region. Financial trails revealed funding sources. Communication intercepts exposed hierarchies and operational strategies. Each piece of evidence built a clearer picture of a highly organized, deeply embedded network. 8. Interrogation and confessions. Arrested operatives provided critical insights into planning, execution, and the intentions behind the kidnapping. Interrogations revealed overlapping roles, internal conflicts, and rivalries within the militant network. These insights were instrumental in identifying the masterminds behind the operation, not just the field-level perpetrators. 9. Impact on policy and security. The investigation exposed vulnerabilities in urban security and the need for specialized counterterrorism units. Lessons learned informed future operational protocols, intelligence sharing, and rapid response strategies for similar high-profile abductions. Governments and agencies began emphasizing preventive measures to protect journalists and foreign nationals in volatile regions. 10. Legacy of the investigation. Beyond solving the crime, the investigation highlighted the importance of global collaboration and intelligence sophistication. IT demonstrated that even in complex, dangerous environments, persistent, coordinated efforts can uncover hidden networks. The findings not only brought some measure of justice, but also reshaped how high-risk situations involving journalists are handled worldwide. The global reaction, diplomacy, pressure, and public outcry. The kidnapping and eventual murder of Daniel Pearl shook the world, triggering diplomatic, social, and media responses that would leave a lasting impact. This chapter explores the complex global reaction and its consequences. 1. Immediate international response. As news of Daniel Pearl's kidnapping broke, governments across the globe reacted swiftly. The United States dispatched senior diplomats and intelligence officers to coordinate with Pakistani authorities. Alerts were issued to embassies, airlines, and international media outlets, emphasizing urgency and caution. 2. Public outcry and media attention. The kidnapping captured worldwide media attention, making Daniel Pearl a household name within days. Newspapers, TV channels, and online platforms continuously covered the story, keeping it in public discourse. Families, journalists, and human rights groups held vigils, press conferences, and advocacy campaigns, demanding swift action. 3. Diplomatic pressure. The U.S. government applied significant diplomatic pressure on Pakistan to intensify the investigation. Pakistani officials were urged to allocate more resources, cooperate internationally, and ensure transparency. Meetings between foreign ministers and intelligence chiefs emphasized the high-profile nature of the case and the need for accountability. 4. Impact on journalism community. Daniel Pearl's case sent shockwaves through the global journalism community. News organizations raised concerns about the safety of correspondents in conflict zones and politically unstable regions. Guidelines and protocols for journalists operating in high-risk areas were revisited and strengthened. 5. Public demonstrations and advocacy. Students, activists, and journalists organized demonstrations in multiple cities worldwide. Messages of solidarity highlighted the universal call for justice and the protection of press freedom. Social media amplified campaigns, keeping Daniel Pearl's story alive in the public consciousness. 6. Role of NGOs and human rights groups. International organizations, including the Committee to Protect Journalists and Amnesty International, closely monitored the situation. They issued statements condemning the attack and urging both local authorities and global bodies to act. These interventions added pressure on governments to expedite investigative processes and prevent similar incidents. 7. Political ramifications. The case influenced Pakistan's internal politics, highlighting gaps in law enforcement and counterterrorism strategy. Calls for reform in policing, intelligence sharing, and border security intensified. The incident prompted discussions in parliaments and international forums about global counterterrorism cooperation. 8. Psychological impact. The global reaction also addressed the emotional and psychological toll on families, journalists, and the public. Daniel Pearl's colleagues and friends emphasized the human cost of terrorism and the dangers faced by truth seekers. Support networks, counseling services, and advocacy groups work to provide aid to those directly affected. 9. Long-term awareness and policy changes. The case set a precedent for how governments respond to kidnappings of foreign nationals. Policies on journalist protection, hostage negotiation, and interagency cooperation were strengthened worldwide. IT highlighted the interconnectedness of global security and the responsibilities of nations to safeguard human rights. 10. Lessons learned. Daniel Pearl's tragic story became a turning point in raising awareness about militant networks and journalistic risks. The public outcry and international attention showed the power of collective voice in pushing for justice. His case serves as a reminder of the need for vigilance, accountability, and proactive measures in protecting vulnerable individuals in volatile regions. Investigations, arrests, and convictions. This chapter dives into the painstaking investigative process, the capture of the perpetrators, and the legal proceedings that followed Daniel Pearl's tragic murder. 1. Initial investigations. Immediately after Daniel Pearl's kidnapping, Pakistani authorities launched multiple investigation tracks. Local law enforcement coordinated with intelligence agencies and foreign diplomats. Investigators focused on tracing militant networks, suspects' movements, and the logistics behind the kidnapping. 2. Role of intelligence agencies. Interagency cooperation between Pakistani, U.S., and international intelligence proved vital. Communications intercepts, surveillance operations, and on-the-ground intelligence helped identify key suspects. The complexity of cross-border militant operations slowed progress, but eventually provided critical leads. 3. Identification of perpetrators. Investigators uncovered a network of militants linked to extremist organizations. Some individuals had prior criminal and militant records, making them high-priority targets. Digital evidence, phone records, and testimonies connected suspects directly to the crime. 4. Arrests and interrogations. Over weeks and months, authorities conducted arrests of key suspects involved in Daniel Pearl's kidnapping and murder. Interrogations revealed operational details, motives, and the organizational structure of the militant group. Confessions and corroborated testimonies helped piece together the sequence of events that led to Daniel Pearl's death. 5. Legal proceedings. Pakistan's judicial system processed the case under immense public scrutiny and international pressure. Trials included testimonies from law enforcement, intelligence agents, and experts on militant operations. Evidence from multiple sources, including forensic analyses and digital tracking, played a crucial role. 6. Convictions. Key perpetrators were convicted for their direct involvement in the kidnapping and murder. Sentences range from life imprisonment to death penalties, depending on roles in the crime. Convictions represented justice for Daniel Pearl, though questions about the larger network persisted. 7. Appeals and controversies. Some convictions faced appeals, delays, and legal challenges, reflecting the complexities of the justice system. Debates emerged over the adequacy of evidence, procedural fairness, and the broader accountability of militant organizations. Despite controversies, the convictions served as a deterrent message against targeting journalists. 8. Challenges faced by investigators. Corruption, bureaucratic hurdles, and threats from extremist factions complicated the process. Investigators had to navigate public pressure, media scrutiny, and diplomatic expectations simultaneously. These challenges highlighted the difficulties of enforcing justice in high-profile, politically sensitive cases. 9. Impact on counterterrorism policies. The investigation informed future strategies for handling kidnappings and terrorism-related crimes. Intelligence sharing agreements, international cooperation, and preventive measures were strengthened. Daniel Pearl's case influenced protocols for journalists' safety in conflict zones worldwide. 10. Lessons from the investigation. The exhaustive investigation underscored the importance of persistence, cross-border cooperation, and meticulous evidence gathering. Daniel Pearl's death highlighted vulnerabilities in both local law enforcement and international security frameworks. The case remains a benchmark for managing high-profile abductions and terrorism-related crimes. Legacy of Daniel Pearl. Impact on journalism, justice, and global awareness. This final chapter reflects on Daniel Pearl's enduring legacy, the lessons learned from his tragic death, and how it shaped journalism, international law enforcement, and global awareness of extremism. 1. Global shock and public reaction. Daniel Pearl's kidnapping and murder shocked the world, bringing attention to the dangers faced by journalists in conflict zones. Massive media coverage, vigils, and public statements highlighted the international outrage and demand for justice. His story became symbolic of the risks reporters face when exposing truths in volatile regions. 2. Strengthening journalist safety. News organizations and press freedom groups implemented stricter safety protocols. Training programs were developed for journalists covering hostile areas, including conflict reporting, kidnapping awareness, and emergency response. Daniel Pearl's case became a case study for risk management in journalism schools worldwide. 3. Impact on counterterrorism and law enforcement. Investigators and law enforcement agencies refined methods for handling hostage crises. International cooperation was strengthened, including intelligence sharing, tactical response coordination, and cross-border legal frameworks. The case revealed vulnerabilities in regional security and highlighted the importance of protecting foreign correspondents. 4. Creation of the Daniel Pearl Foundation. Daniel Pearl's family established the Daniel Pearl Foundation to honor his legacy. The foundation promotes cross-cultural understanding, ethical journalism, and the protection of journalists globally. Programs include scholarships, awards for investigative reporting, and advocacy campaigns for press freedom. 5. Influence on anti-extremism awareness. Pearl's murder exposed the networks of militants operating across borders. Governments and international organizations recognize the importance of monitoring extremist cells and disrupting recruitment. Public awareness of extremist threats increased, influencing both policy and community engagement. 6. Educational and cultural legacy. Daniel Pearl's story is taught in journalism, law, and international relations programs. Documentaries, books, and memorial lectures ensure that his dedication to truth and integrity is remembered. His life and death became a reference point for ethical reporting and the human cost of exposing hidden networks of violence. 7. Reflections on justice. While perpetrators were convicted, broader questions about extremist networks and their enablers remain relevant. Pearl's case demonstrates the limits and challenges of international justice in politically sensitive cases. It reinforces the need for continuous vigilance, cooperation, and legal innovation to prevent similar tragedies. 8. Personal and human impact beyond the headlines. Pearl's death profoundly affected his family, colleagues, and friends. Their advocacy for justice and truth amplified the message that journalists should not operate in fear but with informed caution. Personal stories of courage, persistence, and resilience continue to inspire new generations. 9. enduring symbol of courage and integrity, Daniel Pearl is remembered not just as a victim, but as a journalist committed to uncovering truth. His name has become synonymous with fearless reporting in the face of danger. The global journalism community views him as a standard-bearer for ethical responsibility and moral courage. 10. Conclusion. Lessons for the world. Daniel Pearl's legacy reminds us of the vital role of free press in exposing injustice. His case emphasizes the need for safety, preparedness, and solidarity among journalists and global citizens alike. Ultimately, his story is a call to action, to honor truth, protect those who seek it, and never forget the human cost of silence in the face of violence. As we conclude this deep dive into the vanished in Karachi, Daniel Pearl, Kidnapping and Murder, 2002, the story remains a chilling reminder of the dangers journalists face when exposing hidden networks and extremist plots. The investigation revealed the complexity of international terrorism, false identities, and the shadowy networks that put innocent lives at risk. Daniel Pearl's murder shook the world, but also inspired reforms, safety protocols, and global vigilance. If this documentary captivated you, don't forget to like this video to support in-depth true crime storytelling. Comment below with your thoughts on what could have prevented such tragedies. Share this story with friends who are fascinated by real-life crimes. And most importantly, subscribe to Dark Truth 25 to never miss our latest investigations. Every story has lessons, and Daniel Pearl's tragic fate continues to teach us about courage, justice, and the cost of truth.